Hi, everyone. I'm Kedasha, and welcome to Open Source Friday, the show where we talk about maintainers, about the apps that they're maintaining. I am so excited for today's episode because we'll be talking to the maintainer and the CTO and the software engineer behind OpenFn's Lightning. And Lightning is a digital public good. So, super excited to learn about it, know who's using it, and all that jazz. Tell me, where are you joining from? I'm currently in Chicago. It's super cold in Chicago today because we're still going through winter. But I see Nigeria, Uganda, quite a few people are joining us here on the stream. Welcome, welcome. As you saw in the little video I just played for you, GitHub Copilot is now available for free for you to use in your editors. So it's available in Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. So make sure you check that out. And also, I know there's been a lot of buzz about the brand new model DeepSeek that is also available on GitHub Mobile. And you can actually compare DeepSeek and DeepSeek's R1 and OpenAI's O1 model side by side using GitHub models. I may be doing a video about that soon, so look out for that. But have I been on mute all this time?
Not the whole time. 10 seconds. Not comparing R1, O1.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. But hi Stuart, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, very well, thank you. And you? I guess probably a little warmer. Yeah, I'm phoning in from Cape Town, South Africa.
Oh,
But
nice.
yeah, doing well.
How is it in Cape Town this time of year?
Pretty warm. I mean, today was about, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but probably 25 degrees Celsius, so mid 80s, I think.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's
It's
quite
nice.
warm.
It is. This is our summer. This is our summer. So yeah, it's great.
That's quite warm. Okay, so I was only muted for the last 10 to 30 seconds. Okay, that's great. So what I was saying is, you know how there's a lot of buzz about the DeepSeek's R1 model. It's currently available on GitHub Models. And you can actually compare DeepSeek R1 with OpenAI's O1 right there on GitHub without needing an API key or a login or credit card or anything. You can compare them for free to see what the output looks like. So go ahead and give that a go if that's interesting to you. But today is not about DeepSeek. Today is about OpenFn and Stuart. So Stuart, before we jump into OpenFn, I would love to learn more about you and your career, right? So you're currently the CTO of OpenFn, but what did you do before? What's your history? How did you get into open source?
I've been a computer geek since I was a kid. My first computer was made out of cardboard and had paper that you could roll around. That I wanted a computer so bad. And yeah, I've been into computers since I was probably in coding when I was about 9 or 10 years old, just playing around with BASIC and just HTML and you know, and yeah, and I mean, I kind of never stopped. It's always been like making things has always been like a huge drive for me. So I got really into photography as well. Actually, when I was studying computers, I actually stopped doing that and went and worked as a photographer for a few years, but kind of always got pulled back into this like idea of building worlds and like actually just building things. And so, but like, so I've started my career doing like languages like Delphi and I guess it would be C# and like I found Ruby in around 2007 or so, and that just changed everything for me. And I like focused at the time. It was probably quite risky, but I think it got me so excited. I like really doubled down on it, and that's all I did for up until about mid 2015. Worked on a relatively large government project, but just in the basement. They don't need to see me, kind of thing. I'll just VPN and thank you very much. And yeah, like and then it came around 2015. I met Taylor Downs, the co-founder of OpenFunction, and he comes from a project management and a philanthropic kind of. He ran a consultancy that helped nonprofits and things like that do work involving technology, and he spotted a bit of a gap
Yeah.
in the market. It's just like a need that, the technology is not just for coders. It's not just for people with iPhones, and it's not about getting your music into your car. It's about solving real problems. And so and he was a client of mine at a consultancy that I was at, and well, we got along really well, and I left. I left. I left the consultancy I was at, and like, with tears, not definitely not, but yeah, it was a calling, and
Yeah.
we started working together in 2015. So, and then yeah, that and then in between there, because especially the industry I'm in, is the industry is not endless amounts of money. I mean, if we've been reading the news, grant money does not fall from trees. um,
Right.
and yeah, so I've moved around in just different languages and different spaces, but it's predominantly in terms of like software development. It's pretty much been web focused since day one. I think that's always, I enjoy the move, being able to see all the way to the top what a customer sees, and all the way at the bottom. So yeah.
Nice. That's a pretty good overview of your experience and your journey through technology, and now you're in this area where you need grant money. And I mean, yeah, I mean, we all know that grant money is definitely not endless.
Yeah.
So tell us, how did you come to found or be a co-founder of OpenFN, and also what is OpenFN?
Right. I guess as for my role, I mean, I still give all the credit to Taylor Downs. Like, he has one of us has the vision, and he said before that like that um the people doing research, and helping people with health interventions and all sorts of problems, like, they need data to move around, and the incumbent solutions, like your big ETL systems and stuff, are specifically designed for moving stuff from Microsoft SQL onto Oracle, or vice versa, or SAP to
Mm,
Salesforce and stuff. I mean, these are excellent products. They're incredibly sophisticated, and they are really expensive because they serve expensive purposes, like, or purposes that are worth charging for.
yeah.
And in the social sector, you're left with people writing when these dozens of disparate systems that are just completely different. They Like, connecting them is really expensive. It requires a software engineer who understands both of them, or has to learn both of them, and then the next job
Right.
comes along and it's a different system, and you got to do it all over again. So you're writing these once-off scripts or once-off applications and stuff, and and software engineers are expensive.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Taylor saw this, and I started working with him right at the beginning. We had this V1 version. We had this vision that we could drag and drop stuff. Just drag. I want this form on Open Data Kit to be in Salesforce or to be in Google Sheets, and it was kind of magical. It was like no code. It was a wonderful idea
Nice.
until the solutions get more and more complicated. And I started realizing I was having to get involved every single time we did anything. It's like, oh, it doesn't support this, doesn't support this. So in 2015, we took the plunge, and we rewrote it from scratch, and we added the idea that people could provide their own code, or
Mm.
as my partners call it, an injection attack as a service. This is before AWS Lambda. Like, it was, and then that opened up a whole new idea that we realized that our customers are a lot more technical than we gave them credit.
Mm.
And so they were not afraid of doing a little bit of coding. They just don't want to deal with the ops side. They don't want to deal with
Ah.
concurrency and how do I check my logs? Because people say, oh, I can fire up a Lambda instance, but then you've got to set everything up, and like, where do you get reporting, monitoring, all that kind of stuff. And anyway, it's through my contributions that I was named a posthumous co-founder about 2 years ago, which is, I guess, pretty cool. But but yeah, I did a lot of my contributions were pro bono over the years. But the first year I worked with them, I had to automate myself out of a job, which was one of my proudest years. It was probably about 2015, when we had 1 year's worth of money. Like, that's it.
Wow.
And then about 5 years later, I got a call saying, hey,
So like,
there's
you were
now
one
9 of
of
us.
so you were a contributor to OpenFN before you became like a posthumous co-founder?
Yeah. I was I guess
Nice.
employee one, I guess. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm,
I love hearing those stories of when people go from being contributors to being an employee of the product
mm,
that they were contributing to, because sometimes people are scared to contribute to open source projects because they feel like, "Ooh, what's the point?"
yeah,
I mean, the point is to, enable open source software to stay alive, but also it could possibly lead to a job down the line. You never know. That's
absolutely,
a really good
absolutely.
story.
Yeah, originally we were an open core kind of style, like actually a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
like
yeah.
GitHub is. Where we actually thought of the model when we were rewriting it as like where like libgit is a thing, and it's everyone else can use it, and then there's lots of other organizations these days that do that kind of thing where the front end is not free, but all the tooling is,
Right.
and that's the way we were for a long time up until about 2022.
Ah,
2022, we complete rewrite open source from the get go. So like basically other than the parts that handle your credit card information and like so that like billing
yeah.
management and like for our hosted for our our cloud offering, other than that everything else is open source, like top to
Cool.
bottom. Yeah.
Cool. So to do a little summary of what OpenFN is, so essentially OpenFN allows companies, NGOs, government organizations to integrate multiple systems into like one workflow. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so I guess maybe I'll start with an example. Like we kind
Yeah.
of initially this is from our case studies. It's on our website and things like that. There's like I guess so. I mean, actually, they're in here under the I guess it would be solutions, but um, this is the one I'm probably one of the proudest about. That at least I wasn't directly involved with the actual implementation, but we've built software like this, and that like so in Cambodia, like local NGOs and government agencies, they needed to securely move child protection data that was scattered across the country, and each
Right.
like region had its own choice of software to manage the cases, to manage the like it, different just different cases, treatments, and things like that. And there was a big concern around children having to retell their trauma because they go to a particular hospital and they're like, okay, and they
Mm.
tell
You have to
someone.
say it
Now
again.
that case data, they're like, no, you need to go to a different province or a different state,
Right.
and they're like, and they have to do it all over
Do it
again.
all over again.
And they're trying to get help. There's no one's. I don't think anyone's trying to be malicious here, but like, and so streamlining that by getting involved at and finding out what all those different systems are, and then that when a particular state or a unit inside the government's health system, a message of a certain kind arrives, we conform it, and that requires work to like be able to change it from, system D into system A's kind of message
Yeah.
format, and so. And I mean, that's one example there, and I think we can all. I mean, I think a large portion of what we do, and across the software, across the industry, not just the social impact industry, is like we glue things together. We take like take this API, take that API, and like realizing that there's a one to many over here, and we have to get all these things here. And but how do I know? And what if it gets updated and upserts and all that? It's exactly the same in the social space as well. Like these systems like are are mature. And I mean, can you imagine changing government case management system? You can't say,
That's
we
what I'm
don't
saying.
like we
Yeah.
don't like the system. We're going to go with Salesforce, or we're going to go with, I
Yeah.
heard, I don't actually, and again, there are dozens of these systems that already exist, and they are different, and they're all trying to solve problems, but again, they're different. And like, for example, DHIS2, which is District Health Information System 2,
Mhm.
was developed originally in Cape Town, South Africa. It is now funded in, is it Sweden or Switzerland? I can't remember. It's definitely an S, and it's definitely in Europe. Um, is used in 80 different countries, but not every country. Anyway,
Right.
so it's interoperability, and we're focusing on providing adapters and things that help people do this stuff. But we're not interested in send me an email every time I get a tweet. Like that's what if this and that is for. That's what Zapier can. I mean, Zapier does a lot more cool stuff too, but the big deal is that like no one was supporting and automating things like OpenMRS,
Right.
DHIS2, and all these other systems. Anyway, so yeah.
All right. I'm not sure what happened to my camera. I'm still here. But let's get into the code,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
how were you able to, like, take this use case for example? So let's say you have 5 different organizations that has child protective data.
Mhm.
How did you get all these systems to talk to each other? Like, what does the code look like for all of that stuff?
Right. So I mean, the core of this stuff is adapters, like any other expandable system, and so we've written. I mean, not all, but the majority of the adapters we've written in house over time. I think at some point, I think there's about 49 of them, and some of these products will seem familiar. Salesforce, Postgres, I think Kobo Toolbox wouldn't be, Comcare. Then we got Dynamics. Anyway, all these different pieces, and so you pick and choose, and you construct a graph essentially of what you want to do in different systems. So I'm not sure. I think should we maybe it will make more sense if I jump into like just what it looks like, and we can like visually see it. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
If you can show like the repo
yeah,
or that would be good.
yeah. Let's yeah. So the main well, actually the main application, it looks like this. Let me just log in as at just a demo account here. Right, so this is set up on my local host, like just running here. You agree with there's a bit of a hierarchy. You have projects, and projects have workflows, but this probably makes more sense to everyone else. So here's my workflow. I made something specially for this. Like I said just before the start of the call, like I am unfortunately not actually directly involved with every job that goes through and gets written either for our clients, or by our clients and things like that.
Right.
Like my particular interest, and I guess we got to pick what side we want to do is. So I know that with our implementation people and our customers write the most incredible, like spider's webs of very complicated logic and very hyper specific stuff. But I think that's probably not worth going into for the sake of this particular thing. Anyway, so workflows can be initiated or started with different triggers. In this case, it's a webhook, and when you provision it, you get a webhook URL. You can add a level of authentication if you need to. The other options are cron. And you can either give it a cron expression, choose something like that. So how do you want this job to start? And then we have what we call edges, which are like conditions, like to basically saying like always go through, like no matter what happens, always go through. Or in this case, you can give it an expression, and it will evaluate. So that's to stop. There's certain systems, like upstream systems, that only have like a one forwarding address. You can't like say, hey, don't send this data, and you always at least at some point need to say, hey, listen, like don't process this, please. So that's kind of useful there. And then onto the exciting parts are, and swinging back from adapters, these are our like jobs, where we pick an adapter, the version. As I said, we have a fair amount of adapters, and we pick a credential. So if there's something that we want to, like if you're authenticating with a Postgres box, or you've got OAuth for Google Sheets or anything like that, you have to have credentials.
Yeah.
And so the logic of this really visually flows quite nicely. I think you've got a webhook comes in. I'm going to get the weather, and the job. Open that up. Let's have a look here. So I've got a job here that basically says whatever the incoming state, whatever the city is, go call the weather.in. I assume it's just weather, or however you pronounce it. I'm sure it's just weather. And then you go in there and basically just log it out, and then return state. And we'll get into some of the kind of slightly esoteric looking JavaScript here, but and so let me just unfold it here. Let's throw in some information that says city. I guess it says Chicago. I know what the weather's like here. So Go. Be kind, demo gods. No, because I've tried it with Cape Town. It works. Like, there we go. Does that seem about right? 4 degrees Celsius. My goodness,
It's quite
pretty chilly.
cold.
It's not very windy. It's not very windy right now, which is nice. It's
No.
not so windy city. Yeah. Cool. So that showed an expression here of actually just fetching something, but our attempt is to try and has been always a bit. Remember, so this original idea with the JavaScript stuff started in circa 2015. Promises were not supported on every browser. Async await was a twinkle in a stage 0 proposal's eye, and so we had to we wanted to use JavaScript because I always like to say this, like no one wants to write real, like normal, like plain JavaScript.
Yeah.
Even back in 2015, 2014, there's CoffeeScript and Dart and Clojure.js, all these kinds of things where basically it was like write what you want so that it can just be run, but everyone wants to run stuff in the JavaScript engine because it's everywhere. And so I always find it quite amusing, and actually I'm very grateful for it, that the tooling for JavaScript and compilation and changing JavaScript and reflecting on it is there's very few languages like that, except for your Lisps and other languages where where code is where code is data and data is code, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's been, and so we picked JavaScript because I guess one, I knew it, but also we're coming back to why these things look the way they do. Like, especially when promises were first introduced to the language, like a lot of people didn't understand like asynchronous programming, like where you've got callbacks and promises and things like that. So there was a huge impetus in like saying, hey, we're going to give people a programming language. Well, we're going to give them we're going to give them an editor, but like, how do they know how to write stuff? So we have a transpiler in the background that actually wraps these functions. So these are what we call operations, and our transpiler actually spots our operations and actually wraps them into a reducer that will go through and actually execute these things like synchronously, even though they just follow on for the next line. But like I said, that was it's like 9 years ago. So like I think that there's always room to improve. Like, I guess and to change things. And but I kind of it's a very real problem. I actually think about the idea of giving someone a non-tech or someone who's just learning how to code, give them something that's controlling a workflow, and they're not quite sure how asynchronous programming works. And it's like, that's, I don't know, that's a bit of empathy for people who may go, what is going on?
Yeah. For sure. But let's kind of go back to OpenFn, right? So if someone wants to get started with OpenFn, what do you think are the most essential concepts that they need to understand in order to use the open source project?
Right. Yeah. So depending on what your flavor of interest is, there are several aspects. Let me just get a OpenFn. Let's go here. Right. So what we've been looking at there is a project called Lightning. So if you're fond of Elixir and a little sprinkle of React, Elixir, LiveView, Phoenix, and Ecto and Postgres, like this is where most of the application lives. Like the coordination glue that allows people to do these jobs and be able to work with this kind of stuff. So it's a pretty big project. I mean, we got 240 tags, so we've had quite a few. We release pretty much every week, and so this is about the back end and the front end, but then the parts that you were seeing when it comes to adapters and integrations. So we've got our adapters mono repo. We used to have individual repos. They've been now in maintenance mode now, but this is where all the modules for individual adapters come in. And a colleague of mine, Joe and Tucci, who hi guys, with the documentation for this stuff is really, really good. You can check out. So that, yeah.
So essentially, you're using some Elixir, using some React, and you have some GitHub Actions that's being used on the repo itself. But yeah, it's a good question that Rock has. So, like, what automations is Lightning or OpenFN providing exactly? Just so we understand.
Right. So in a more slightly more concrete example, let me actually fire up. I think we may have some. So this is an actual customer or a person who actually uses it. This is Grassroots Soccer.
Yeah.
They are, yeah, they do health interventions, is like HIV education mixed with sport. And this is a great organization. So they have some. This is all public. So
Yeah.
they have dozens and dozens of these like individual jobs. And so like the first step, now obviously I can't show you this on the chart, but would be to go and retrieve forms from from their ComCare instance and
Sure.
actually iterate through like all the information, pluck out and pluck out information and forward it on probably to a upset intervention. So this has been then, so it's about cleaning data, it's about replacing names, some often anonymizing things if depending on who the destination system is. And this looks like it's going to Salesforce. So that's, and so a lot of these organizations often sometimes they're tracking efficacy of their interventions. You want to know how many mosquito nets have reached a particular place. You want to know like who's, what if it's working or not. That's often a very common question, is like, is this intervention working? Are all the pieces together?
Right.
So in this case, it would be taking surveys that have been either filled out digitally or by hand, and then someone's manually input them to one system and then moving things in there. So
Mm.
we've had other examples where with farmers and things like that, they need to get an SMS when a social, like when they need to come for a checkup, or when there's money for them to collect for their farms and things like that. There's they would be able to get an SMS. And again,
Right.
so there's this very broad web of like, when the, like, I mean, not to quote another application, if this then that, like, if when this happens, or when I get told about this, do something
Of
else,
course.
I guess. And I guess our, like I said, our secret sauce really, or our special offering, is that
Yeah.
we support systems that really no one else does.
Ah, gotcha, gotcha. So, since you're working with like NGOs and social services organizations, I'm curious about what the approach to ensuring data security looks like, especially when you're dealing
Mm,
with sensitive information from social services. So, like, what does that look
yeah.
like in OpenFN or Lightning?
So it's quite difficult with obviously. So when it comes to like security, like stuff's encrypted at rest and things like that kind of stuff. But when it comes to data, there is a lot of onus on the user. We, like, if someone wants like a particular, if they want an air gapped instance,
Mm,
which some of our customers have that, like that, it's up to them to do that. And I think we highly recommend, especially when it comes to sensitive health information.
right,
Um, so we also have, there's flags that you can enable for jobs to basically saying kind of fire and forget. So the information hits the server, and once the job has gone through, we will log whether the job succeeded or failed, and we'll keep logs, maybe, if you
right.
want, but it will just drop the input and output data on the floor. It never actually hits the database. It makes debugging very difficult,
Sure
but
thing.
once the system's working, you can do that. Another facility we have is we have like a log scrubber. So if someone,
Mm-hmm.
this will not stop bad actors, but if someone like tries to log a secret or decides to log a sensitive field, our
Mm-hmm.
logs will just will just, I think we've all seen it, and GitHub Actions does it. I think Circle CI does it. It's all, like Sentry does it, where it just puts stars over sensitive areas and things like that. So it's definitely it's a space that we can't really offer value without having like kind of an agreement that, like,
Yeah.
it's up to the person who's using this to also, either have very quick rotation periods. Like, so if they've got a series of jobs, they've got 2,000 surveys coming in. It's like it's a big batch job. Like to have to set their data retention policy to like 4 days, 2 days,
Yeah.
24 hours, so you get enough time to like look at it and drop it on the floor, which, yeah, it's pretty much it from a data, people managing data, just being sensitive about it is pretty much the way we approach it. It's different for everyone, but
Nice.
hmm.
Nice. That's good to know. And I'm looking at the
Hmm.
repo right now, and
Hmm.
I noticed that. So, like, okay, let's say I want to go in and I want to run Lightning locally. Like I want to start
Right.
using it and adjust it to my liking. Like I forked it, I want to start using it. I
Yeah.
see that there is a .env.example file.
Yeah.
What goes in there? Um, like how do I get started using OpenFN locally or
Right.
Lightning specifically locally?
So there are multiple components. As I said, one big thing about I find really important about the way that we've built this product is that it's always been important to me that to have minimal running like pieces. Like no one wants to try something new and there's like 9 Docker containers and you're just like,
Of
what's
course.
going on? I need to install what? I'm using Mongo, Redis, and Postgres. What's going on, guys? You know. So there's two major. Well, there's I guess is the Elixir application, which has obviously its own dependencies, and then
Of
it
course.
requires Node.js and Postgres, and that's it. So there are instructions on the site, like for running it locally. Like if you want to actually if you want to if you want to actually actively develop against it, and it's as simple as cloning stuff. If you follow the defaults, you probably don't even need to replace the env file.
Right.
If you and yeah, there's a few little tweaks that us ARM 64 Mac users like have to have to jump through. But if you're running on x86 Linux, you'll be smooth sailing. But in terms of running it and deploying it, there are guides as well we've got a Docker Compose file. I think this is probably for running stuff locally. And as you can see, the dependencies here, we've got Postgres in the web app. And then in this case, we separate the worker out to this is a Node.js application, and that can be found. I'll show you up on the repo now in a sec. When you're running the app in development mode, the server automatically starts a local copy of it under the hood, so you don't have to go and run it. But in production environments, you're going to have more than one of these workers.
Yeah.
And the workers are pool-based system, so the workers and maybe swinging back to security, like our workers are almost treated adversarially, like where we use public-private key authentication between stuff, even on an internal network, and then every worker is a sub process, and we're always scared, and like we're not scared, like we're, I guess, with a healthy pinch of paranoia around the idea that someone could write a job and see someone else's data, and
Right.
so each worker is actually given a token that is scoped and only lives for about 5 minutes or whatever the supposed runtime is, and after that, it's closed off. Each job that's actually each worker that's performing work is only able to actually access secrets or access data in that scope for that amount of time. Anyway, that's something I've always thought was pretty cool.
Cool.
But yeah, and for those JavaScript excited people as well, we've got a repo, again, uninspired name, but it's stuck. It's called Kit. It is a mono repo with pretty much, it's a kitchen sink, and it is got the packages inside here are CLI. So you are able to also trigger jobs and run jobs and work on them without using the front end. So if you're running Lightning on the back end, you can still, through the CLI, or actually even in some jobs, you can run without using Lightning whatsoever. If you're just playing on the command line, if you want to just dev locally, a lot of our implementation engineers do that. They sit in the command line, with just VS Code up, and they pulled on a terminal, and they work like that as well. So
Of
we've got
course.
CLI compiler, the big bag of stuff, and we try to design it as like as split apart as possible so that we can reuse stuff. Yeah.
Cool. And I noticed when I was just briefly looking at the repositories, and OpenFN uses something called adapters, right?
Yeah. So that would
So
be, yeah.
what are adapters and why are they important for integrations?
Right. Like I was saying that with ETL systems and other and other systems, like they're only as good or as useful as the systems that they support. And like,
Mm-hmm.
so you will never go looking for something that supports, the Microsoft SQL, or Postgres or Oracle or anything like that. They all, every ETL system that's worth money is, will support those. I guess this is the secrets. This is our like special offering, is that OpenFn supports things that traditionally like people who are doing these interventions would have to write stuff by hand. Like, how do you talk to Open Data Kit, or DHIS2? And again, if people haven't heard about this stuff before, like, that's okay. Like, that's to be expected. And I guess
Right.
that has been the problem in the sector, is that it requires someone who knows exactly how both systems work, top
Right.
to bottom. So we try and take that away. So our packages, in this case, this is the adapters repository,
Uh-huh.
is a large set of adapters that help make communicating with these other systems easier. So
Cool.
including OpenFN.
Yeah.
There's an adapter to talk to OpenFN as well. So we've got a customer who writes jobs that creates more jobs. Like,
Cool.
so it's a kind of the circular life thing going on there.
Nice. And we have a question here. So, does OpenFN support or use any LLM or any AI agents to get any of this stuff done?
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
we do. It'd be a bit difficult to show locally, but I think it's just dot staging. Excuse me for. Actually, I'm actually not going to log into that right now. That's. But yeah, so there is a little tab here called AI Assistant, and I wish I could actually demo it properly right now. And it allows you to ask questions about what you're doing, and we've got a tuned model. I'm not going to pretend I understand it completely. There's some people
Oh,
really
of
spot on this
course.
machine learning stuff there, but we've got an application called Apollo that
Uh-huh.
runs under the hood. That is a Python app. So I guess we do have another language to add to the list.
Nice.
And this is a team of two that have been really, really hunkering down with this stuff, and that allows us to ask questions about, ask questions about jobs, and basically generate some code. And so we're using we're using a GP4 and or Claude as well, depending on the use case.
Sure.
So yeah, and it's one of these bring your own key kind of things. So
Uh-huh.
this,
Of
yeah,
course.
yeah,
I know, imagine paying for all your users to use your business API key.
exactly,
That
yeah.
would get expensive pretty quickly. Well, that's pretty cool. So essentially Apollo allows you to ask any questions about whatever you're building or trying to integrate. So like it can give you guidance on how to I guess complete the integration.
Yeah, exactly that. Trying to see now if I've got any things that I can just throw up now. There we go. Okay, it's just I found one on production that isn't sensitive. Yeah.
Of
Again,
course.
there you go. We
Is
take
this prod?
yes,
Are you playing in prod right now?
yeah. No, I just
Oh. Oh,
so
that's quite brave, isn't it?
well, I know prod's stable. Like, it's certainly more stable than localhost, that's for sure.
Oh my gosh.
Localhost is running on main. I can't remember which tag I should use. So anyway, yeah, we take the like AI responsibilities stuff quite seriously. Like this I think will remind you, I think, every day. Like, just kind of like, well, not get started, but basically go, hey, like, remember, like,
Yeah.
what we're saying could be rubbish. The stuff that you're doing is matter. So I
Yeah.
will ask you a question like, can you give me an example of, I guess, actually I pretty much did this earlier. I used this earlier today to help write that weather example. So like
Of
how
course.
to use this adapter to request the weather from WTTR.in. There you go. haven't quite nailed down the scrolling, the scrolling stuff. But
Sure.
and that's actually exactly right.
Nice.
If I take that, let's take it back to. I mean, it actually looks. Let's just compare it. It's a little different, but still, that is, I think, is absolutely correct. I just comment that out. Let's just run this quickly.
Oh no.
I ran it locally, but
There we go.
Oh,
Dear
it's just
Lord.
getting it for. Not sure what country this is for, but again, read the results from an LLM. but
Right.
but yeah, I mean, so we've tuned it. We've actually like trying to tell it like, hey, this is not just a blank JavaScript document. Like
Right.
there are
Oh,
patterns.
cool.
Yeah.
That's
So
good.
and the
So,
application has built-in documentation. Metadata is incredibly powerful way of
mm,
introspecting people's if adapters support like Salesforce, where it can start giving you type definitions on the fly of your Salesforce instance. So as you
mm,
start creating objects, it will actually give you a drop down of what you have. Again, it would take 20 minutes for me to actually set it up, but like
right.
it's because I don't use Salesforce day to day. But anyway, there's a lot of stuff baked in here. It's a very big application. Like I said, we've been doing this for 9 years now. So
Cool.
there's a lot of history, there's a lot of features. It's very difficult. I think one of the biggest challenges has been to try and make this as easy to use as possible without ever
Mm,
sacrificing that power user feeling, which has always been like,
yeah.
yeah,
Cool. So
yeah.
just being okay, so my last question for you today is what would you say is one of the most, not even, it doesn't even have to be the most, but like what's an unexpected way you've seen organizations use OpenFN?
I mean, the jobs that write jobs thing, I really did not see that coming. Like I've for
Yeah.
real, like actually when we did the rewrite, we didn't have the APIs for provisioning workflows like this. We'd always supported this YAML format that allows you to kind of like Terraform-esque kind of thing, say, hey, can you set up this workflow for me? And that was fine. And then we had
Mhm.
this big client that said, we want to move over to Lightning. And we were like, oh, wait, your jobs do what? And they showed this to
Mm,
us. They have like 240 jobs or something. Like,
mm,
and they change them as they go, because depending on, I think it has to do with different mappings against different treatments and different codes and stuff. So if someone changes a generic mapping of when it kind of like insulin treatment and the code, or the hospital that has to deal with that code changes, it needs to change the
mhm.
jobs. So instead of going through and finding all the jobs that do it, I thought that was a particularly novel way of doing it. I mean, and we use it internally as
Interesting.
well. When someone signs up, we don't use Zapier to message our
Right.
customer team. We use our software to tell us. So I think that's
Cool.
less cool than the jobs making jobs helping people,
Yeah,
but it's still
absolutely.
yeah, dog fooding,
Awesome.
if you will.
So we have one more question here. So Gaurav followed up. He said, "Thanks for explaining about LLM and agents capability, but I think what you demo was more of an inbuilt agent for OpenFN." Yes, but
Mm.
he was mainly asking, can we, as the open source developers, have LLM nodes so that we can build AI agents using OpenFN?
I don't
Interesting
think it would help.
concept.
It definitely is not geared to help with the actual like actually running models or executing code. Again, our only target language is JavaScript, and that's fairly intentional. Like
Yeah,
it doesn't run Docker images or anything like that. So the idea of running arbitrary code of any
yeah,
language or any platform is not really supported. Um,
cool.
but calling out to an LLM's API, I mean, just like how we do as well, I mean, it would be totally supported, you know. But yeah,
Okay,
not really our focus. Yeah, it's a great question.
sounds good. Yeah, very, very good question, Gaurav. Thank you so much. So as we wrap up this stream, my last question to you, Stu, is in like 30 seconds or less, how would you explain OpenFM in very simple terms? So I'm especially curious about how the data flows from one system to another in the
Mhm.
explanation.
Right. I mean, so as OpenFn brings data from disparate systems, like, and automates data flows and transformations that help organizations uh, help other people, basically, and especially, I guess it helps bring organizational information together in fragmented environments, uh, places that don't have great internet, places that have different technologies, different laws, that kind of stuff. And it allows people to focus on actually doing health interventions rather than worrying how they're gonna
Mhm.
communicate what they need. Yeah.
Gotcha. So it allows these organizations to just be more efficient in how they're, using their tech stack essentially. Because,
Yeah.
we never really think of organizations having a tech stack, but every company has a tech stack. Even
Absolutely.
even if engineers are, even if you're not an engineer that's coding, you're using the software, and that's your tech stack. So it allows organizations to have like an integrated tech stack to
Yeah.
share information across multiple
Mm.
I guess people or
Our
systems.
biggest measure, at least one of the most important ones for me, is having um, is measuring, like, if a grant, like, again, just throwing the numbers out there, if there's a government grant to go and provide mosquito nets in like uh in like in a country in Africa that has and it's $50,000. But
Right.
where do you send them? How do you communicate that they're available,
Right.
and getting that information out there? And also, because that $50,000 is not going to just come from the sky. Just say, oh, just make sure some people get it.
Right.
The Like, that $50,000, but if you're spending then $4,000 to $8,000 on human time and a programmer who does not work in the social sector to write scripts for you that may or may not work, like, and it's not repeatable. Like, it'll be different the next intervention. Our biggest measure is to try and get that to be as small as possible, so they can, you know, write only the stuff that's unique to them, and we do the rest. Like, that is the driving force behind this software.
Nice. Nice. Well, thanks so much for coming on and talking to us
Thank
about
you.
OpenFN. It's been great chatting with you and nice seeing the product. I'm so happy that it's out there helping, folks and organizations, and serves as a great example of a digital public good. If you want to contribute to OpenFN, the repository is being scrolled across the screen, and I just dropped it in the chat as well. Gonna pop it up here. Hopefully you go and check it out. If you have any questions, make sure you open up an issue, check it out, try to run it locally if you can. And yeah, thanks so much for joining us today. And I'll see you next time.
Thanks so
Bye.
much. Bye.